Family vanished in Death Valley. 13 years later, two hikers make a shocking discovery. To the untrained eye, the land around Furnace Ridge was a desolate maze of dried creeks, ghost mines, and Joshua trees. But Reeves knew better. Every bluff had a story, every wind-sculpted rock a rumor. And one story in particular still kept him up some nights: the disappearance of Russell Buck Hargrave in the summer of 1972. Buck was a fire watcher, a volunteer posted at the abandoned Signal Bluff Tower for 3 straight summers. Tall, sharp-jawed, and full of Jack London poetry, Buck had grown up on a cattle ranch in Bishop. He was the kind of man who tipped his hat even to coyotes, wore rawhide boots year-round, and kept a copy of The Call of the Wild tucked into his shirt pocket. Reeves had liked him, most did. Then, one August morning, Buck vanished. No note, no signs of struggle, just an empty lookout and a half-packed rucksack. Sheriff's deputies combed the hills for 6 days. Planes flew overhead, dogs sniffed the gullies, but nothing turned up. A week later, a Navajo tracker named Elmo Yazzie claimed he found boot prints circling a patch of scorched earth 5 miles from the tower. No one believed him. Too much heat, not enough evidence. Officially, Buck was just missing, but Reeves never bought that. And now, 25 years later, something had shifted in the sand. The previous evening, a pair of hikers had come knocking at Reeves' cabin door. Tourists, late 30s, sweating through synthetic shirts, GPS units dangling from their necks like talismans. They said they'd camped near the old Signal Bluff site and heard something strange, a humming mechanical but distant like a buried engine. That night, their dog refused to leave the tent. Reeves didn't spook easily. He'd seen desert hallucinations before heat snakes, ghost lights, mirages that looked like women waving in white dresses. But the look in the hiker's eyes wasn't heat stroke, it was fear. As the sun clawed higher, Reeves finished his cigarette and stood the shotgun creaking as he lifted it. A younger man might have gone back to sleep. But Reeves had learned something over the years. When the desert whispers, it usually means something wants to be found. He dressed slow. Chambray shirt, denim overalls, boots with 3 separate soles stitched together. Grabbed the old Winchester, a canteen, and a small leather pouch of mementos, a compass, a coin from the Philippines, and a locket with a sun-bleached photograph of his late wife, Ellie. By 7 a.m. he was moving toward the ridge, the earth crackling under his boots. As he crested a rise near Chimney Gulch, he saw something new, a flash of mirrored glass where there should have been only sand. Binoculars confirmed it, a panel of what looked like aircraft aluminum, partially buried beneath a wash. He paused. That wash hadn't run water since 1983. The desert was about to give something back. The closer Reeves got to the glinting object, the more certain he became. This wasn't scrap left over from some old mining rig. It was smooth, precision cut. One edge curved inward like a section of fuselage, while the rest had that clean, impersonal shine, only found in factory-built tech. Military maybe, but it wasn't scorched like a crash site. It was just there, half swallowed by sand and time. He scanned the area with a practiced eye. No fresh tracks, no tire impressions. Nothing but the glassy swirls of windblown grit. Reeves kneeled beside the panel and brushed away more sand, revealing the faded stencil of a number 16G B-42. Nothing familiar, but the lettering was in English, which ruled out Soviet relics or weird Cold War junk, which, believe it or not, sometimes washed up this far west. He tucked the information away. Behind him, the wind picked up whispering through the brittle sage. He glanced back toward Chimney Gulch. Nothing moved but the shadows. By noon, he'd traced a rough outline of the object pacing a perimeter. It was larger than he'd thought. At least 20 feet of it still buried, and that was only what he could estimate by the shallow depressions in the surrounding terrain. If this was part of something bigger, and he suspected it was, it had gone down hard and quietly, maybe even decades ago. That night back at the cabin, he brought out one of his old notebooks and began sketching. On one page he wrote Buck Hargrave, disappeared 1972, site signal Bluff, found metal panel 701397, possible aircraft energy source. The last question was prompted by what he saw next. The next morning, Reeves returned to the site with a metal detector he hadn't used in 20 years. It still worked, sort of. Just past the aluminum panel, it gave off a soft chirp like a pulse. He dug. 6 inches down, he found a circular metal ring, copper around the edge, scorched black at the center. No markings, not military issue, not civilian either. Something buzzed faintly in the air, a pressure like when thunderclouds build over distant hills. But there were no clouds. Reeves stood and looked north toward Signal Bluff. Something had always felt off about the Firewatch Tower, even in the 70s. He remembered nights when Buck radioed in to say the air smelled charged. Nights when the signal cut out altogether. What if Buck hadn't wandered off? What if he'd seen something? The local VFW hall in Bishop still had a few men left who remembered Buck Hargrave. Reeves spent the next week visiting 3 of them. He bought the beer. They brought the memories. George Elkins, 84, had once flown recon missions during the Korean War. He remembered hearing rumors about Lockheed testing vertical launch prototypes in the Nevada range back in the early 70s. Something about anti-grav turbines and magnetic shielding. Sounded like science fiction, he admitted, but that desert hid stranger things than God intended. Charlie McKean, a retired Forest Service officer, swore up and down he saw lights above Signal Bluff the night Buck disappeared. Blue lights, hovering. He'd been dismissed as drunk, but it was the third man, old Jim Merrow, who gave Reeves the piece that fit. Buck came to me 2 days before he vanished. Jim said his voice cracked with age. Said he picked up a frequency on the tower's emergency radio. Not in English, not in any language at all, just tones, patterns, like music almost. Told me he was going to track it. He had a map. You ever see the map? Jim shook his head. He kept it rolled tight in a mailing tube. Said if he didn't come back by the 15th, I should give it to the sheriff. He never did. And I never found the tube. Reeves leaned back. Buck hadn't just vanished. He'd been searching. On July 19th, Reeves returned to Signal Bluff. The tower was still standing, skeletal and rust-bitten. The platform creaked underfoot as he climbed. From this height you could see half the valley's sun-scorched flats, parched arroyos, distant ranges glowing pink under the desert haze. Inside the lookout box, the air smelled like dust and bat guano. But something was off. A floorboard had been pried up, recently. Reeves knelt. Underneath was a canvas roll, stiff with age. He pulled it out carefully. It was a map. USGS, dated 1968, marked with a wax pencil in looping notations. There were 3 red X along the ridge between Signal Bluff and Red Basin, and a crude arrow pointing toward something labeled only as the mouth. He didn't sleep that night. By dawn, Reeves had packed his mule and a day's worth of water. He left a note on the table. Gone to the mouth. If I don't make it, bury me next to Ellie. And just like that at 74, Clayton Reeves disappeared into the desert. The desert beyond Red Basin was a place of erasure. No paths, no names, no echoes. It was land stripped of narrative, where time folded in on itself and left only wind. As Clayton Reeves pressed on past the last X on Buck Hargrave's map, the sun rode higher, a furnace in slow bloom. He moved carefully, rationing his water, stopping only under the sparse shadows of bent mesquite. The mule Roscoe plodded behind him faithfully, nose low, ears twitching at mirages. Each hour stretched longer than the last, and still no sign of the mouth. Reeves began to doubt it existed. Maybe it had all been desert madness. Maybe Buck had imagined it tuned in to some frequency of grief or sunstroke. But then, just before noon, he saw it. A sharp divide in the ridgeline, a gash in the earth, half hidden by a jagged outcropping. It wasn't a cave, not exactly. More like a cleft that had been melted smooth. The walls glistened faintly, though no water had touched this place in a century. Reeves stepped forward, heart hammering. As he approached, the air grew still, not silent still, as if even the heat had paused. The entrance was barely 6 feet high, framed by vertical stone, worn into the shape of a narrow oval. Its surface bore no carvings, no runes, just a smoothness that did not belong to the weathering of this world. Reeves took a breath, touched the edge, and stepped inside. Inside it was cooler. The walls curved gently inward, and the floor sloped down. He lit a carbide lamp and advanced slowly, shotgun slung across his back, map tucked into his vest. 10 yards in the tunnel opened into a chamber, and there in the center lay a body. Reeves knelt. The remains were dry, desiccated, but intact. A weathered hat still clung to the skull. Beside the body, a rusted thermos, a flare gun, and a small notebook sealed in waxed cloth. Reeves touched the cover. R. Hargrave. He opened the notebook. July 12, 1972. They followed the signal. It's not random. It pulses like Morse, not man-made. We think it's embedded, or anchored. We found an entrance. Wade said it's not natural, I agree. July 13th, inside now. The walls conduct sound, like a whisper chamber. I hear my voice repeat before I speak. The echo comes first. That's not how sound works. July 14th. The signal is louder. It's not sound, it's thought. Emotion. I feel things that aren't mine. Images. A place with no sky. Machines that aren't made. A city under glass. I don't sleep. July 15th. Wade is gone. Just gone. No tracks. No scream. Just absence. I should leave. But the pull, I think it knows me. The entry stopped. Reeves stared at the final line for a long time. I think it knows me. Behind him, the wind whispered again. Only now he wasn't sure it was wind. He buried Buck Hargrave under a pile of flat stones just outside the chamber, said a prayer, marked the spot with a cross of twisted wire. Then he descended again, deeper this time, into what Buck had only begun to discover. The second chamber was larger, dome-shaped. At its center was a device, if device was even the right word. It resembled no engine Reeves had ever seen. It floated 6 inches off the ground, humming faintly, a lattice of metal bands, orbiting a dull black core. Light moved across its surface in fractal pulses like a heartbeat. Reeves approached. The air thickened. Not hotter, denser. Thoughts came unbidden. Ellie, the war, the nights he'd slept alone under the desert stars, and then another image, something not his own, a tower of glass pulsing with light in a canyon that did not exist on any map. He reached out. The hum spiked. For a moment, everything reversed sight, sound, gravity. Reeves floated. Not his body, but his mind. He was somewhere else. A room of white stone, a corridor that bent in on itself, machines that breathed, eyes that watched but did not blink. And then he was back, gasping, collapsed on the chamber floor. He crawled backward, heart slamming. Behind him the object pulsed once more, then dimmed. The vision faded, but not the memory. That would never fade. He left the tunnel at dusk. Back at the cabin, Reeves wrote a letter. To the Park Service, to the state, to anyone who might believe him. He included Buck's notebook, a copy of the map, coordinates. He never mailed it. That night the humming returned. Only now it came from beneath the floorboards. Roscoe howled. The lamp flickered. Reeves stood in the doorway, shotgun in hand, and waited. Not for death, but for the return of whatever had taken Buck Hargrave and come back for him. The humming didn't stop. Reeves had weathered decades of desert storms, firefights in Korea, and the long ache of Ellie's passing, but nothing unnerved him like that low pulsing drone rising from beneath the cabin floorboards. It wasn't loud, but it was constant, like the sound a man hears in the marrow of his bones when he's being watched. By morning his hands were trembling too much to roll a cigarette. He tore up the floor, plank by plank, through layers of packed dirt, until he struck something hard and unyielding. At first he thought it was an old septic lid, but as he cleared more earth, he found the same matte black material as the floating lattice device, cold to the touch, despite the rising heat. He pounded on it with a hammer. It didn't budge. He poured water over it. The droplets sizzled, then vanished into the surface without a trace. Finally, he traced its edge with a crowbar and realized it wasn't a lid at all. It was a door, or maybe a hatch. It was waiting. He didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, he drove to town. Bishop hadn't changed much since the 80s. Same storefronts, same sun-cracked sidewalks, same smell of motor oil and sun-baked pine. He stopped at Joe's garage to ask after an old friend, Pat Monroe, a prospector turned conspiracy crank. Used to swear the Air Force was running black site tech out of Manzanar Valley. Pat's still around, Joe grunted. Got himself a new gig down south. Ghost tours. Claims he saw a lizard man in Trona. Figures, Reeves thought. He tracked Pat down by evening, living in a trailer full of static monitors and walkie-talkies duct-taped to folding chairs. Pat hadn't lost the shine in his eyes, or the smell of unfiltered camels. "You said you found a hatch," Pat asked, voice lowering. Reeves nodded. "What shape? Hexagonal?" "Black. Cold." Pat stopped chewing. "You ever hear of Project Naismith?" "No. Didn't think so." "'Cause it wasn't real, and by not real, I mean it's the one thing even the tinfoil boys won't talk about. Supposed to be a joint op between the Air Force and something called Section 4. Not CIA, not NSA, older. Funded through uranium contracts in the 60s. They were looking for anchors. Places where matter thins, where time skips. Like wormholes, Pat shook his head. Like gates. One-way doors. Reeves told him about the vision. The city under glass. Pat didn't laugh, didn't scoff, just muttered, "God help you," and gave him a cracked Polaroid an image of a sigil scratched into the salt flats near Badwater Basin. Same shape as the hatch. "Where'd you get this?" Reeves asked. "Traded it for 2 gallons of moonshine and a working Geiger counter. Don't go back alone, Clay." Reeves didn't answer. Back at the cabin, he prepared. He laid out supplies like a soldier, prepping for a last mission. Flashlight flares, radio compass, water rosary, and his wedding ring, just in case. He fed Roscoe a double ration and scratched him behind the ears. "If I don't come back," he said, "find your way to Buck. You know where he is." Then he opened the hatch. It moved like a lens shutter folding into itself. Below, a spiral staircase carved from obsidian descending into a blue-tinged void. No sound, no smell, just a pressure in his chest like being pulled inward. He descended, step by step through impossible darkness until the air changed. It was warm, not desert warm, body warm. He reached the bottom and stepped into a space that defied architecture. The chamber was spherical walls humming with energy. Lines of light flowed like rivers across the interior, pulsing in patterns too complex to follow. At its center floated a form, not a machine, not quite a being, a construct of shadow and light ever shifting, and it spoke, not in words, in memory. Ellie, she was there, or something wearing her smile. Reeves saw her in their kitchen in 1973, stirring soup, heard her laugh, felt her hand on his wrist, then Buck. Not dead, not alive, just present. Images flickered: soldiers in jungle mud, children under silver skies, a tower rising from fire. Reeves fell to his knees. "You knew us," he whispered. The chamber pulsed. Not yes, not no. A resonance of awareness, of familiarity. "You're not God," he said. "You're not alien. You're—" The thought formed mirror, not a gate, a reflection. He stood shaking. The chamber dimmed. A doorway opened, white light pouring in. He stepped through. He woke up in the desert, face down in the sand 10 feet from his cabin. The hatch was gone. Roscoe was gone. Inside, the shotgun lay where he left it. The floorboards were untouched. No hole, no black metal, no evidence. Only the Polaroid remained burnt at the edges, and the humming gone. But that night, as the wind howled across Furnace Ridge, Reeves saw a new light blinking above Signal Bluff. Blue, pulsing, familiar, and he wasn't afraid. The next morning, Reeves found the land different. The sand was still hot, the sky still pale and infinite, but something in the world's cadence had shifted. Birds flew lower, shadows held shape longer. The air moved slower as if time itself had been draped in burlap. He checked the radio. Nothing. He checked the compass. It spun. He sat on the front porch, Roscoe's leash coiled beside his boot, the shotgun across his lap. He didn't speak for hours. Didn't eat. Just stared out across the wash, where the light still blinked on Signal Bluff. That night the blinking turned rhythmic. One flash. Pause. Two flashes. Pause. Then three. And repeat. He began writing. July 21st, 1997. The desert speaks in threes now. I think it's trying to finish what Buck started. July 22nd. Signal Bluff blinked 3 blue, then red. I watched until dawn. No planes, no trucks, no human movement. Something old is awake up there. He flipped open Buck's notebook again. A detail he'd missed before in the margin, Buck had scribbled what looked like musical notation. Not melody, pattern. Reeves hummed it aloud. 3 short notes, 1 long, a pulse, a bridge between. That week, strangers began arriving. First, a black SUV with no plates parked at the edge of Reeves' access road. 2 men stepped out. Thin pressed suits, government eyes. They didn't approach the cabin, just stood and looked. Took pictures, then left. 2 days later, a chopper passed low overhead. No markings, no ID. Then came the kid, looked about 25. Park ranger uniform too clean, boots unscuffed. Asked questions with a practiced friendliness that felt like surveillance. You seen any weird activity near the ridge, Mr. Reeves? What kind of weird, unauthorized campers? Drills, drones. Maybe someone playing militia. Reeves just smiled. You'll know weird when you see it, and if you do, you'll wish you hadn't. The kid didn't come back. On July 29th, Reeves hiked back to Signal Bluff. No map, no plan, just instinct. The Firewatch Tower had changed. No rust, no decay. Somehow it had reset bolts, shown glass, intact wood unwarped, like time had been wound back. Inside he found a device, not floating, not ancient, just waiting. A receiver maybe. Copper wires, oscillators. It pulsed faint blue, and beneath it a tape, cassette, labeled Project Naismith Echo Point Log 3. He took it back to the cabin and dusted off an old deck, static. Then a voice. Conclusive now. Hargrave's resonance matches earlier projections. Interface initiated July 15, 1972. Subject retained for echo persistence. Second anchor designation CR identified. Crossfield event imminent. Click. Reeves stared at the deck. They knew, all this time. Hargrave hadn't vanished. He'd been claimed, repurposed, left to echo. And now it was Reeves' turn. The humming returned that night, but inside his own head. No floorboards, no hatch, just vibration behind the eyes. He saw things. Dreams maybe, maybe not. Ellie, younger than he remembered, holding a book she never read. Roscoe standing in a corridor of glass, wagging his tail. A shape behind them, light folding over itself. Then a sound music in threes, the signal. When he woke, his hands glowed faint blue. August 1st, he packed again. No letter this time, just a journal. Coordinates. He buried it near the chimney. Marked the spot with 3 stones. Then he walked back to Signal Bluff. As the light blinked, he stepped into its rhythm, matched the pattern, let it wash over him, and disappeared. 2 weeks later, a hiker found the cabin, abandoned, food untouched, notebook full of names and numbers, some in Reeves' hand, some not. One page simply read, "He finished the call." Clayton Reeves stepped into the blinking light and became memory. For the briefest moment, the world inverted. Colors folded, air reversed, bones unspooled like thread. Then came stillness. He stood in a place without horizon. The floor beneath him was not ground, but memory hardened into geometry. Above, no sky, only vast patterns spinning constellations that updated in real time. Maps not of stars, but of moments. Buck stood ahead, not as a ghost, not as a man, as something else. Whole, smiling, the lines of 1972 still sharp across his face. His voice was soundless, yet understood. "Been waitin', Clay." Reeves nodded. "I brought the pattern." Buck gestured, and the city emerged, a cathedral of crystalline glass, folded inside a canyon with no name. Towers pulsed, not with power, but with purpose. This was not alien. This was not future. It was human potential built outside of time. "They only find us if the anchor completes," Buck said. Reeves looked around. Shapes moved at the edge of form. Memories made physical. A girl chasing a kite. A man burying a ring. A soldier clutching letters. What is this place? The echo of unfinished things. Back in the world, the notebook Reeves had buried near the chimney began to hum. Park rangers found it during a wildfire sweep. Inside were drawings of the tower coordinates, timelines, musical transcriptions, and a new page, crossfield complete. The page bore Reeves' handwriting, though he was gone 2 weeks. That same day, static interrupted aviation channels across the Owens Valley. It lasted 4 seconds. The pattern 3 pulses, 1 pause, a long note, same as the signal. It happened again a week later. Then an amateur astronomer near Cerro Gordo spotted an anomaly, a structure glinting at the base of an unmarked basin, only visible during solar alignment. He hiked toward it, never returned. But his telescope recorded the last image. He took a man in a hat, smiling beneath a blue light. In 1998, a new radio telescope in New Mexico picked up a repeating pattern from deep space. It wasn't natural, it wasn't random. It matched the tones in Reeves' journal. NASA classified it. One scientist leaked the waveform, posted it online. Most thought it was a hoax, but a retired ham radio operator in Lone Pine recognized it, played it into a broken speaker. The cone vibrated, then burst. When he rebuilt the device and played it again, the light bulb over his desk flickered blue. He hasn't spoken since. 25 years later, the Firewatch Tower at Signal Bluff still stands. Still rust-free. Still untouched by time. Some say you can see figures inside on certain nights. 2 men, 1 mule. A woman's silhouette in the corner. A new ranger station was built near Furnace Ridge. They avoid the bluff. Say the radios don't work near it. Say their watches stop. Say they dream in blue. One ranger, a young Navajo woman, swears she saw a man sitting on the edge of the platform one dawn. Hat pulled low, shotgun over his lap. He looked right at her, then blinked out of existence. When she described him, an older staffer showed her an old missing persons photo. Clayton Reeves. That year, a new entry was added to the Death Valley archives. RE Project Naismith. Subject CR presumed fulfilled. Pattern synchronized. System restored. Echo loop stable. Access level clearance void. Final entry. Reeves' journal. August 2nd in 1997. It wasn't about solving the mystery. It was about becoming part of it. The desert never forgot us. It waited. We were always coming back. I didn't vanish. I crossed. 1 mule. A woman's silhouette in the corner. A new ranger station was built near Furnace Ridge. They avoid the bluff. Say the radios don't work near it. Say their watches stop. Say they dream in blue. One ranger, a young Navajo woman, swears she saw a man sitting on the edge of the platform one dawn. Hat pulled low, shotgun over his lap. He looked right at her, then blinked out of existence. When she described him, an older staffer showed her an old missing persons photo. Clayton Reeves. That year, a new entry was added to the Death Valley archives. RE Project Naismith. Subject CR presumed fulfilled. Pattern synchronized. System restored. Echo loop stable. Access level clearance void. Final entry. Reeves Journal. August 2nd, 1997. It wasn't about solving the mystery. It was about becoming part of it. The desert never forgot us. It waited. We were always coming back. I didn't vanish. I crossed.